Well, well, well. Here you are, gathered once again. Normally, I wouldn't interrupt my hibernation to speak with mortals. But I have a special obligation to your dimension to keep you informed. Even so, it pains me to subordinate myself to this. Allow me to introduce myself. I am known as the Master, and I'm the great being of the multiverse. Or so I like to say. What if I told you that for every decision you make, there is an alternate timeline where you make the opposite decision? And for every you that is out there making decisions, there's a completely different you making those same decisions. That is the multiverse's beauty. A fantastic spectrum of cause and effect that contains every possible situation at every possible time, and all of it can be accessed by just a simple gateway. I operate from within the space between dimensions and timelines, manipulating the fates and destinies of all of the multiverse's residents. Oh, and watching. Always watching. You see, when my brothers and sisters created the multiverse, they did so not out of necessity, but out of desire. When they were first discovering our powers whilst wandering the void, they found that any creation they made rapidly fizzled away in a process we call entropy. Even our own bodies, created to distinguish ourselves from one another, were torn asunder by the void. To satisfy their desire to create, the great beings came to the conclusion that a safe haven would need to be established to protect their creations from entropy. So 3 great beings volunteered to stay behind, to contain and conceal the newly created multiverse from the void. These great beings are 3 of the 5 we call the Great Sages. You're listening to one of the other 2. I discovered the multiverse after it had already been created, and rather than using it as my own personal sandbox like the other great beings, I decided to focus simply on observation. It was there I began to notice the pattern. The multiverse was a structure, a lattice of dimensions and timelines, all alternative to one another, where the intersecting lines form a universe. While the number of dimensions and timelines are not infinite, the means at which they are expanding leads to infinite possibilities. Dimensions are arranged in stacks of horizontal planes, and each plane is made up of universes that were different from each other since their inception. Timelines work in a similar manner, but as vertical planes, which intersect with the horizontal dimensional planes. The creation of new timelines expands the multiverse outwards horizontally, and great beings creating new dimensions on the edge of the multiverse expand it vertically. As I'm sure you're already aware, one of our involvements in the multiverse was creating sentient living creatures who are controlled by spirits created in our own image. Spirits are 4th-dimensional beings who perceive time through the eyes of 3-dimensional bodies. For context, a great being is a 10th-dimensional being. I believe it was Newton who said, "For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction." That also applies to the 4th dimension as well. Since a spirit is 4th-dimensional, their choices have an effect on time. So every time a spirit makes a decision, a new timeline is created where the same spirit makes the opposite decision. This creates new branching timelines, which cause the multiverse to expand exponentially as time goes on. When a timeline splits, it causes slight stress to the time frame the decision was made, which is usually not an issue for that universe as a whole. But say, for instance, a fourth-dimensional spirit were to be able to freeze time. This could cause multiple timeline splits within a single time frame, which could cause irreparable damage to the origin universe. Thankfully, instances like this are extremely rare, yet rarely accidental. Lastly, I want to note that all dimensions and timelines have a kind of bleeding effect on each other, such as how the planet Spherus Magna and the planet Luna Magna are similar in size and shape and have similar histories, but are otherwise completely different entirely. This effect can sometimes reach far beyond an adjacent universe, so that echoes of completely different alternate realities can be found. Ever since coming into contact with other great beings, my influence over the multiverse has become known to them. There are some who have accepted this reality, and others who refuse to bend the knee. However, there is nothing they can do to stop me. They have come to fear my power, because I know what makes each of them tick, and with a snap of my fingers, I can make all of their hard work disappear. For there is an ultimate secret to the multiverse, something deep down all the great beings know, yet some refuse to believe is possible. I know I may not be the most trustworthy of great beings, but believe me when I say this. Entropy is still happening, and eventually, it will bring all things to an end. And when that time comes, if the great beings have refused to put their differences aside, all of creation will feel entropy's fury.